You're gonna be okay. Just rest now. I thought I wouldn't wake up. I was so scared.
She found him passed out in the bathroom of the bar where she worked. No ID. No phone. Soaked in blood and expensive cologne. She let him sleep it off in her tiny apartment. By morning, 6 men in suits were looking for him. And he was the most dangerous man in the city. The bathroom door was locked. That alone told Maya something was wrong. In the 3 years she'd worked at Dante's, the bathroom lock had been jammed. It was one of those facts of life at a dive bar on the city's edge, like the broken neon sign in the window and the smell of spilled beer that never quite washed out of the floorboards. It was 2:47 a.m. She was alone. The last customer had stumbled out 20 minutes ago, and Tommy, who was supposed to be cleaning the kitchen, had texted that his mom needed him and he was bailing. So Maya was locking up by herself when she heard the sound, a heavy thud from the back of the bar, followed by nothing. She almost ignored it. The survival instinct that came with this job said to lock the front door and call the cops from the street. Instead, she grabbed the baseball bat she kept under the register and moved toward the bathroom. The door was locked. She knocked, hard. No answer. She tried the handle again. It didn't budge. The hinges were on the inside, so she couldn't kick it out that way. She stood there for a moment, bat in both hands, listening. That's when she heard the breathing, shallow and wet, like someone who was drowning on dry land. It took her 15 minutes to get the door open, using a credit card to wedge the lock. When it swung in, she found him slumped against the far wall, his forehead resting on the toilet rim. His shirt was torn open, and there was blood. A lot of it. It had soaked through the expensive wool of what looked like a tailored dress coat, pooling on the grimy tile floor. He was unconscious. His face was sharp, all angles and bones, with dark hair plastered to his forehead. He looked expensive. Everything about him screamed expensive, the watch on his wrist, the leather of his shoes, even the cologne that cut through the stench of the bathroom. She'd been thinking about quitting, going back to school, doing something that didn't involve people vomiting on her shoes at 2 in the morning. This man was her payday. That's what she told herself. Not that she felt anything watching him bleed. Not that something in her chest was pulling tight when she saw how shallow his breathing was. He was a problem with a solution attached. Someone had lost him, and someone would pay to find him. She called an ambulance. Then she hung up before it rang through. She called the police non-emergency line instead, and when they asked about injuries, she downplayed it. A drunk who fell. Nothing serious. They said someone would come by in the morning if they had time. The city was busy tonight. So Maya made a decision that would rewire the rest of her life without her knowing it. She got water. She got the first aid kit she kept in her office, the one her sister had given her when she started working in healthcare. Her sister was a nurse, had taught her basic triage before she dropped out to pay rent. She cleaned the wound. It wasn't a bullet hole. It was a slash, deep and vicious, like something serrated had dragged across his ribs. It would need stitches. Real stitches. The kind only a doctor could give him. But she didn't call an ambulance. Instead, she sat with him until he came to, just for a second. His eyes opened, dark and unfocused, and his hand shot out with terrifying speed. His fingers closed around her wrist, and his grip was like a vice. He said something in a language she didn't recognize. A single word that sounded like a warning and a command all at once. Then his eyes rolled back, and he was gone again. Her wrist throbbed. She could see the marks already forming, 4 fingers and a thumb, purple and blooming. She stared at them, knowing she should call the police now. Knowing that whatever this was, it was beyond her. But his breathing was slowing. The blood loss was getting worse. If she called anyone, he would die in the next 2 hours. So Maya did the thing that made her a fool or a savant, depending on how the story ended. She got his arm over her shoulders, braced her hip against his weight, and hauled him out of the bathroom. He was heavy deadweight, but adrenaline was a hell of a drug. She managed to get him to her car, a 2009 Honda Civic with 180,000 miles on it and duct tape holding the passenger window together. She drove him to her apartment instead of the hospital. 15 minutes across the city to her cramped studio on the south side, where nobody asked questions and the landlord was too busy with his own problems to care about anything else. She got him on the couch. She got him out of his soaked clothing. She found a pair of sweats and a t-shirt in her closet that belonged to an ex-boyfriend, and she dressed him like he was a doll. She used tweezers and hydrogen peroxide and whatever medical supplies she had, and she cleaned the wound the best she could. The bleeding slowed. He didn't wake up. He just slept, his breathing steady and even, like he didn't have a care in the world. Maya locked her bedroom door. She left her phone charging on the nightstand, just within reach. She lay in the dark, listening for sounds of him moving, for signs of danger. She told herself she was insane. She told herself that by morning, he'd either be dead or gone, and this would be over. She'd never see him again, and it would just be another weird story she didn't tell anyone. She didn't sleep. She listened to him breathing through the walls, and she waited for the sun. It came around 5:30 a.m., gray and cold through her window. She got up, made coffee, and went back to the living room to check on him. He was still alive. Still breathing. His color was better. Whatever he was, whatever he'd been doing, his body was fighting back. She was sitting at her kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee, when his eyes opened. He didn't move. He just lay there, staring at her ceiling, his dark eyes processing nothing. Then he turned his head toward her, and something shifted behind his gaze. Recognition, but not of her. Recognition of the situation. Of danger. He sat up slowly, wincing. His hand went to his ribs, and he lifted the t-shirt she'd put him in. He stared at his bandaged wound for a long time. Then he looked at her. "Where am I?" His voice was low and rough, like gravel and cigarette smoke. It was the kind of voice that made people listen without knowing why. "My apartment. You were bleeding. You needed help. You should have called the police. Would that have helped you?" He didn't answer. He just kept studying her face, and she realized he was assessing her. Running calculations. Trying to figure out if she was a threat, an opportunity, or a complication. "Water," he said finally. She got him water. He drank it straight from the glass, and then he asked for coffee. She made him coffee. They sat in her tiny living room, this strange man she'd pulled from a bathroom, and he thanked her. Actually thanked her. Like gratitude was a word he rarely used and wasn't entirely comfortable saying. "I need to leave," he said. "Not yet. You're too weak. You don't understand what you've done." "Probably not. But you're not dying in my apartment." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something flickered across his face. Respect, maybe. Or the recognition that she wasn't terrified of him, which was either very stupid or very dangerous. She had to work that night. She made him promise to stay, to rest, to not bleed on anything. He promised, and when he said it, she believed him. She left him her apartment key and went to work at Dante's, and she couldn't focus. She kept thinking about him, about the way his hand had grabbed her wrist, about the word he'd whispered in that language she didn't know. It was her day off the next day. She was in her apartment, making him soup, when he asked her for her laptop. She hesitated, and then she handed it to him. He pulled up the news sites, and she watched his face change. Watched the moment recognition turned into something darker. Marcus Voss, presumed dead after coordinated attack on Voss organization leadership. The headline was stark. The photo was him, in a $1,000 suit, at some private event. His dark eyes and sharp jaw unmistakable. He read the article, and then he closed the laptop slowly, carefully, like if he moved too fast, everything would shatter. "You're him," Maya said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "Why are you still here?" "I don't know." He looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Like she'd suddenly become very important or very dangerous. Before she could ask him what that meant, her phone buzzed. A text from her landlord. Someone was asking about her. Someone was asking if she lived alone. Someone was asking if she'd seen anything strange last night. They had found him. Marcus moved like a man who'd been waiting for this his whole life. He was calm, almost peaceful, but there was lethal precision in every gesture. He told her to pack a bag. Essential documents only. She grabbed her passport, her birth certificate, the deed to her mother's house that she'd inherited and never sold. She grabbed photos. He told her to leave them. She brought them anyway. When they heard the cars pull up outside, when they heard the heavy footsteps on the stairs, Marcus positioned himself by the door. She saw him for the first time as what he actually was, not an injured man she'd rescued, but a predator fully awake. When the door burst open, he moved like violence was his native language. She heard it more than saw it. The sound of impact, the sound of bodies hitting walls, the sound of someone crying out in pain. Then he had her by the hand, and they were moving. Down the fire escape. Through an alley. Into a black SUV that appeared like it had been waiting for this exact moment. The car accelerated into the pre-dawn streets, and Marcus finally looked at her. His shirt was soaked with blood. His wound had reopened. He looked like a man running on fumes and spite. "You should have called the police when you found me. Would they have helped?" Maya asked, and he didn't answer. The penthouse was on the 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, glass and steel and cold precision. Marcus moved through it like he was walking through a memory. He collapsed after 3 flights of stairs. The elevator was too visible, he'd said. She rewrapped his wound again. She watched him take calls on encrypted phones, speaking rapid Italian, ordering things that made her skin crawl. A warehouse fire. A shipment intercepted. A man's name mentioned with finality, like someone was just being crossed off a list. Days passed. She couldn't leave. Not because he stopped her, but because leaving meant becoming a loose end. Loose ends in this world got tied up permanently. So she stayed in the penthouse, trapped but not confined, watching a man wage a war she didn't understand against enemies she couldn't see. On the 4th night, Marcus took a phone call that changed something in his expression. He listened, said very little, and then he looked at her. "They want to meet. 3 days. Neutral ground." "Who's they?" "The family that tried to kill me. The family that's hunting us." He paused. "They're bringing a photo. They want confirmation that you exist. They want to know if you matter to me." Maya understood then. She'd stopped being a rescued stranger and become an asset. A piece on a board. Leverage. The warehouse was exactly what she expected, abandoned, industrial, echoing with the sound of their footsteps. Marcus kept his hand on her arm, proprietary and protective at the same time. When the rival family's representatives arrived, she recognized one of them. An older man with a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. He'd come to Dante's once. His nephew was a regular. She'd served them both drinks. His face changed when he saw her. He looked at Marcus, and something unspoken passed between them. "You know her," Marcus said. It wasn't a question. "My nephew's bartender." "Then you understand. She's neutral ground. She moves between worlds. Between your world and mine. She's not one of us, which means she can be both of us." It was a gambit. A dangerous one. But it worked. The men nodded. A deal was struck. Not peace, exactly. But an understanding. A ceasefire that would hold as long as Maya existed in the space between. As they walked out of the warehouse, Marcus reached for her hand. She let him take it. Not because she'd given up fighting, but because she understood what he was offering. Stay in the penthouse, fully his. Or step into the gray, become the mediator, the woman who belonged to both worlds and neither. She chose the gray. Outside the warehouse, another car was waiting. Not Marcus's. A woman stepped out, older, elegant, dangerous in a way that was completely different from Marcus. She looked at Maya and smiled. "So you're the girl who broke the Voss rule."
No attachments. No leverage.
The woman extended her hand.
I'm Nicoletta Voss.
Marcus's mother. "And I think you and I are going to need to have a very interesting conversation about what my son has gotten himself into." Maya shook her hand, and she knew that her life had just become infinitely more complicated. She'd gone to work at a dive bar thinking she'd pour drinks and survive. Instead, she'd found a bleeding stranger in a bathroom, and now she was walking between empires, caught in a web of blood and power that she didn't fully understand but was far too smart to try to escape. The city below them glittered like broken glass, and somewhere in that maze of streets and shadows, a new kind of war was beginning.